I'm going to rip through through a little bit of background, very little, and then Mike is going to get up and give a chat, give a little talk, and then we're going to sit down and do some Q&A. So it's a little bit different from usual, but got started as Silicon and Synapse in '91. One of the co-founders, you can see right there. Started out doing a bunch of port work, which we will talk more about. 93, early 90s, made two games that, you know, a bunch of us in the industry were going, where the heck did these guys come from? Holy cow, Rock and Roll Racing and Lost Vikings cut a swath through the game business. I'm serious, it was pretty amazing when we were all playing these. Actually, at some point we're going to have to figure out what happened to Silicon and Synapse and Chaos and then Blizzard and then Davidson and Associates and Vivint. Anyway, it's a crazy story, which I hope we get to the bottom of here tonight. Worked on a couple more titles as Blizzard before changing the world the first time, at least my world. Changing the world a second time. Changing the world the third time. Depressing everybody in the game business over and over again. Yet again, oh my God, I mean, come on, nobody is this successful, nobody's this good. How does this happen? Well, we'll find out. Diablo 2, which I was just telling Mike, I sadly had to take off the hard drive on my laptop recently because I ran out of room, and I'm not putting anything back on here from Blizzard until it's Diablo 3. Warcraft 3, great game. We still play it at the office when we should be working. And then, of course, the world-destroying World of Warcraft. So just a couple of stats here. I don't know. You know, 2001, there was a comment that I assume was true, and I bet is still true today. Never sold a game that sold fewer than 2 million units. That's pretty impressive. The Diablo 2 debuted as the fastest-selling PC game ever, got replaced by Warcraft 3, got replaced by a World of Warcraft add-on. Holy cow. Battle.net, 12 million subscribers. That was the most recent number I could find. Bet that's higher now. Over 9 million subscribers in a massively multiplayer game, forcing me to eat crow on so many levels with so many people. I don't even want to go into it. And recently named the 4th most important person on the web, sitting right here talking to us tonight. So, with that having been said, I could make you read this great quote. This is from Alan Adam, who is one of Mike's founding partners. I love this. But a game company staffed only by gamers. If only all companies were like that, we all might have the best-selling game of all, or the fast-selling game of all time, replacing the fastest-selling game of all time, replacing the fastest-selling game of all time. So, yeah. Anyway, put the quality of the game first. Good words of advice there.
Actually, you guys should read that, because that basically sums up everything I'm going to say.
Uh-oh. Well, we'll get that off the screen real quick.
Okay.
Sorry about that. All right, so like I said, we're going to do this a little differently tonight. Mike is going to give a lecture, and then we will get down to Q&A. We have just switched, so here we go. All right, over to you, sir.
Okay. Hello? Can everybody hear me okay? If you can't hear me, raise your hand. Okay. So this is a talk that I gave not too long ago for the Austin Game Developer Conference. Any of you were at the Austin Game Developer Conference? Or any of you at my talk? You were? Okay, well, sorry, you can hear some of... No? You were or not? Were you there? Yes. Okay. You can hear some of this again. So I wanted to start off just kind of by taking a step back and looking around at the environment that we all live in, which is totally unique to the human experience in all of human history. The stuff that is going on during our lives. This has never happened before. Opportunities are popping up that didn't exist before. Things that are possible weren't possible before, and that kind of impacts certainly for all of you guys. When you graduate and go out into the world, things that are going to be open to you are new and different, and some of them may be even difficult to predict. So you want to watch and follow the trends, right? So this past century has been the century of transportation, communication, and information. I think that sums most of it up. The world has become a much smaller place. You're able to communicate with people anywhere in the world instantly. You couldn't do that before. You're able to travel. I was able to travel to Austin for a 2-day trip just to talk to you guys. And it's very easy for me to do. I'm flying from here for a meeting at Google and then back to the office. Very easy. Information, storage and retrieval, increasing what we're able to do with information, which is changing industries, right? It's changing the music industry dramatically. The rate of technological progress has continued to increase exponentially. That has not happened in any industry ever. Unprecedented in the history of the world. Sometimes when things are moving so fast, you kind of lose sight at just how much has changed. 100 years ago, it was a completely different world. The way that people lived, completely different. There were only 8,000 cars in the whole country. There was no Air Force because there were no airplanes. Orville and Wilbur Wright demonstrated their airplane for the first time to the U.S. Army in 1908. Only 8% of the homes in the U.S. had a telephone. So for all of you who play World of Warcraft, kind of the analogy would be, think about World of Warcraft with no flight paths. Before you could afford a mount, it was a much bigger place. And it took a long time to get anywhere. So the exponential increase in technology, that rate is described by Moore's law, which says that the density of transistors on an integrated circuit are doubling every 1.5 to 2 years. And that impacts, of course, our ability to process information, to store data, all of these things that we've been talking about. It's been driving this change. If this kind of rapid progress were to apply to, say, the transportation industry, then a 9-hour flight from LA to Paris back in 1991 would now take about 2 minutes. So quite dramatic. So what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to give you guys a brief history of Blizzard, share some of our core philosophies that I think have served us really well over the years, talk a little bit about World of Warcraft and some of the surprises, challenges, and lessons that we've learned along the way. World of Warcraft, the success of World of Warcraft, the number of players we have to support, has totally transformed the company in ways that we really didn't predict. And so we've really had to adapt and scramble to catch up with what that game has demanded us to do in order to properly support it. Okay, so I started Blizzard in 1991 with 2 other UCLA grads. I studied electrical engineering at UCLA. My 2 friends studied computer science and engineering. When we started the company, basically Alan Adham and I each put up $10,000. That was our seed capital. We brought our computers into the office from home. I had a 386 with, let's see, an 80 megabyte hard drive, which was a high-end PC at the time. It was a much simpler time to be developing games in the game industry. Warren knows this. CDs were used to play music, but they weren't used to store data yet. You had floppy disk drives, which were a lot smaller. the amount of data you could put into a game was much smaller. And so there was a lot of time spent on trying to compress things down and cut as many corners as you could, but your games couldn't be very big because we didn't have the storage for that. We got our start by doing conversions. So we would approach more established companies like Interplay Productions and offer to take their games, which they had released, say, on the PC, and convert those over to the Amiga or Macintosh or something else. And that's kind of how we learned about game development. Like I said, I studied electrical engineering. I didn't study game development. I didn't really know a whole lot about it. I learned what I learned by looking at how other developers in the industry approached the problems that they did in the architecture of their games by porting their source code to different platforms. It's a very good educational experience. In 1991, that happened to be the year that Nintendo released the Super Nintendo in North America. And Interplay hired us to do a racing game called RPM Racing, which was actually a port. It was a port of an old Commodore 64 game called Racing Destruction Set. We gave it a facelift with graphics and music and everything, and so you might not even recognize it if you saw the other game, but that was our first game, and it was out the first year the Super Nintendo was out. I think it was the only American developed game out that first Christmas. Initially our focus, then we started doing some original titles like Lost Vikings and Rock and Roll Racing. In 1994, we decided we wanted to start self-publishing our games. We sold the company to an educational software maker called Davidson and Associates. And I think we'll probably talk more about this. It's pretty important. I won't get too much into that. But we decided to make the switch over to the PC, and our first PC game was Warcraft, Orcs and Humans. And from there, I think we've always tried to look at things from a gamer's perspective. You know, as a gamer, what do I want? What do I want to play? What kind of features do I want in my game? Hey, the internet is becoming really popular. That's really cool because that means I can play against other people. So how should that work? It was really difficult to do. You kind of had to be a power user in the beginning. You had to know the other guy's IP address. You had to type it in. And we wanted to make that easy. You know, it seems like, well, what if we had a program that just let you meet up with other people and made it very easy for them to play against each other? So we came up with the idea for BattleNet. And at the time, there were a lot of other companies kind of doing that, but charging a fee for it. And as a player, we didn't really want to have to pay for that. We just wanted to be able to do it. So we decided BattleNet would be a free service to our players. And I think we can probably get more into that. Who owns Blizzard now? So in '94, we sold the company to the Davidsons. They were a public company. In '96, the Davidsons sold their company to a company called CUC International. On the same day that CUC bought Davidson and Associates, CUC also bought Sierra Online, which at the time was the largest PC publisher in the United States. CUC merged with another company about a year later called HFS, and they changed the name of the company to Sendent, so we were now part of Sendent Software. And shortly thereafter, they found that the CUC side of the business wasn't keeping their books properly, and there was this big scandal. It was, at the time, the largest case of fraud in the US until Enron beat that, I think. And so they had a lot of problems, and they decided to sell their whole software business. And they sold it to a French company called Havas Publishing, which was owned by a French conglomerate called Vivendi. And that's where we sit now. Blizzard Entertainment is a division of Vivendi Games, which is wholly owned by French company Vivendi. Vivendi ended up selling Havas Publishing, so they're out of the equation, but they held on to the games division. The beautiful thing about all of this is that by 1994, when we sold the company to the Davidsons, we had an understanding with the Davidsons. We didn't feel like we needed to sell the company, and so we basically said, they basically told us, hey, you guys know what you're doing with entertainment software. We had been selected as Best Software Developer of the Year by Video Games Magazine the year before, and we had started a track record. We had some pretty good things in development, and they said, look, complete creative autonomy. We don't want to change anything that you're doing here. We want you to be our entertainment division. Just keep doing what you're doing, and you'll have access to our great marketing and distribution and sales department and warehousing operations, you know, all of these things that you can't do yourself. And so we thought about that and ultimately said yes. And since we were able to, you know, put out a series of very commercially successful titles, we've been able to hold on to that creative control throughout the years. And I think that that is unique in the industry. I don't think there are any other examples of that. And I think it is something that has allowed us to do things that no other company has been able to do. Make some difficult decisions along the way, and also just kind of hold to our principles of making sure that every game we put out is ready to go out and is what we consider a great game. So I think you did a pretty good job of that. Okay, so throughout the years, I think what has enabled us to be successful is that we have stayed true to the same core philosophies that we had in the beginning. And this isn't going to be a game design talk. This is really going to be more of a business and philosophy talk, but I should say just right up front that if we don't get the gameplay right in our games, then nothing else matters. We can have the best marketing plan, you can have the best PR plan, you can say all the right things, you can have the best pricing. It doesn't matter. If your game's not great, then you know, eventually people will figure that out. So my partner Alan used to use this donut analogy when describing, you know, what is Blizzard's philosophy when it comes to approaching the game market. So he'd draw a donut, and the donut represents the game market, the mass market, the people who are willing to buy and play games. The inside of the donut, the center part, which isn't as large, is the core. These people buy a lot of games. They're the early adopters, the opinion makers. Ideally, we want to hit both of these markets. We want to hit the core and the casual markets, and we do that by making our game accessible to the casual markets, but deep and replayable and competitive, so that the core gamers, when compared to everything else that they're doing, they still think that we're making a great game, and they can go evangelize to the rest of the world. And that there aren't barriers to playing our game that would prevent casual players from actually getting past the initial gameplay experience. So that's the idea of easy to learn, difficult to master. And probably, you know, a great example of that would be chess. Simple rules, very simple rules, small number of pieces, and yet you could spend your lifetime trying to master the game, and people do. And so we try to keep that in mind when designing our games. So the second point is we look at the Blizzard brand as our most important property. We protect it We try to build value in the Blizzard brand. We want it to stand for something to players. When they see the Blizzard name on a box, we want that to mean something. We want it to mean high quality, fun, polish. We want, ideally, I mean, the ultimate goal would be if a gamer walked into a store and saw a Blizzard game on the shelves and didn't know anything else about the game, but that it was from Blizzard. Ultimately, we would like that to be enough, and for the player to make the purchase decision, take the game home, because they trust that we wouldn't have released the game if it wasn't great. From a marketing standpoint, this is kind of marketing speak, but marketing, people talk about brand withdrawals and brand deposits. So you can do things to add value to your brand, and you can do things to kind of cash in on the value that you've added and take money and take away value from the brand. So when somebody walks away from a transaction feeling like they didn't get their money's worth, that would be a brand withdrawal. When somebody walks away from a transaction and experience feeling like, oh wow, I got way more than my money's worth, that's a brand deposit. We want to be making only brand deposits and avoid the brand withdrawals. We also try to resist the pressure to ship early. Like I said, this was a talk that I gave at AGDC, the Austin Game Developers Conference. So, I mean, for you guys, well, of course, why would you want to ship early? That's ridiculous. But there is so much pressure in the games industry, and we feel it too. And it comes from everywhere. It comes from all the players who want the game, and they're tired of waiting. And you promised it them on this date, and how come it's not ready? You guys suck. How come you didn't release the game yet? What are you doing? It comes from the finance people, because if you're in a public company, you've got your quarter, and it's about to close, and the numbers are all going to get wrapped up, and if you don't ship the game by X date, you're going to lose X million dollars of revenue, and then the analysts are going to say bad things, and the stock's going to go down. And then, of course, there's the team that's been working on the game for a really long time, and they're all tired, and they want to, go back to their lives, and they just want to ship the game. All of these things put pressure on you to get that game out so you can move on to the next thing. And we try to remember, hey, we only get one chance to make a first impression. Once you put the game out and people play it, you can't just expect and plan that we're just going to fix those things later. People are going to have the experience that they have and then decide whether they're going to keep playing the game. They won't necessarily come back later. In financial terms, I think that the argument about releasing the game to make the quarter is a flawed argument, because that quarter is only the most important quarter until the day it closes, and then all of a sudden everybody's focused on the next quarter. And if you push the game out too early, you just screwed next quarter and the quarter after that, and you made it very difficult for yourself. If you hold on to it, okay, maybe your numbers weren't that great that quarter, but now the next quarter is going to be great, and your quarter to quarter improvement is going to be good, and that's a nice story, and plus the game's going to sell longer, and everybody's going to like it, and they're going to want to buy the next one. And I think it's a pretty easy argument to make. And we got lucky back when we were working on Diablo, because we did everything possible to get Diablo out for Christmas. We actually took down the Starcraft team and had all of the developers in the company working on Diablo to try to get it finished for Christmas, it's the most important retail time of the year. Everybody's going out and buying gifts, and you really want to be on the shelves for Christmas. We weren't ready. We missed Christmas. And it was okay. We finished the game, we released it. It actually did great for the next 12 months, or longer even. It was okay. And the reason I say we were lucky is because this proved the point. It wasn't a theoretical argument anymore. We could go to our parent company and we could say, hey, look at Diablo. That proves it's not the date that the game comes out. In fact, most people don't even remember the date that we released Diablo. They just remember that, yeah, that was a good game. I really enjoyed Diablo. World of Warcraft, The Burning Crusade, missed Christmas also. and it was a very conscious decision. We could have hit Christmas if we wanted to, but we knew that we had kind of a rocky launch to World of Warcraft. We weren't fully prepared. Our servers weren't fully stable, and this was our opportunity to show our players that, hey, you know, we've learned a lot from that, and we're able to have a smooth launch. And so we decided we were going to take some extra time, a few extra weeks, miss Christmas, put in extra testing, and make sure that we didn't ship the game before it was fully tested. And of course, that was also okay. Another dangerous pressure is the pressure to do everything at once. It's easy to see how quickly the industry is moving and to see all of the things that are possible and to go and say, oh yeah, we have to do this and we have to do that, and oh, somebody just did that and we should do that too. And you end up getting so ambitious that you end up failing at everything, right? That's the risk. And so we think it's important to focus on what's important, to identify what that is and focus on it, make sure you get that part right, to build on your successes gradually, gain expertise, and then get more ambitious. I mean, obviously, World of Warcraft wasn't our first online game. We had a lot of experience from doing online games with Battle.net and with our games on Battle.net. Diablo 2 was a role-playing game. It was multiplayer. It wasn't as complicated as World of Warcraft, but we got to get our feet wet and learn about all of these different aspects to running an online game with an online community and maintaining it over time with servers in a distributed network. And we were able to apply those things to World of Warcraft. Maybe not perfectly, but definitely helped. Okay, so this is kind of a look back at Blizzard's evolution as a global company. We have identified being a global company as one of our big priorities. And it was not always that way. When we first started, really the United States was the only important gaming market in the world. So we'd create our game in English, and then we'd gradually translate the game into a whole bunch of other different languages over the next 6 to 8 months and release them, you know, as we got to them. But nothing could impact the United States release schedule. You had to get the game out in North America in English as soon as possible, so that because time to market was important. And then we discovered that actually there were gamers in Europe. They just weren't buying the European versions of the game. They were buying gray market versions of the North American version of the game. So when we released these European versions of the game, the retailers really weren't all that excited about it. They didn't load them very deeply into their stores because all the hardcore players that wanted the game already had it. And so you never really had an opportunity to get to the casual markets because it was kind of a non-event at retail. Asia developed pretty differently. In Asia, well, first of all, it's a more complicated adaptation into Asian languages because they tend to be multi-byte languages. Takes more data to represent the characters. And also, game rooms were developing in Asia. They became very popular in Korea, Taiwan, China, and it's important to be successful in Asia that your games operate well within that environment where there may be, 200 people sharing the same PC and playing the same install of a game. So we were looking at all of these things, and around the time that we released, we were getting ready to release Diablo 2, we decided that the way to deal with this growing global market was to do a simultaneous worldwide release of our games. So we'd actually hold on to the North American version of the game, translate it, and then release it everywhere at the same time. And then the European retailers would really get behind that. There'd be a big event. Everybody would know about it, and it turned out to be very successful. In Europe, proved that there was a big actual market for our games in Europe, and that's basically our strategy today. We did not do a simultaneous worldwide release for World of Warcraft, and the reason for that is, coming back to the previous slide, is trying not to bite off more than you can chew. It is quite a huge logistical effort to coordinate a simultaneous release of a game. And with our server infrastructure just going out for the first time, we wanted to focus on, we didn't want to have to focus on every single market at the same time. We knew there might be fires to fight, and we had limited resources, and we wanted to make sure we got it right and then expand out. But we did release within the first 6 months in North America, Europe, Korea, China, and Taiwan. And this kind of shows you a historical look at our global launch growth of first 12 months sell-through. One thing, you guys, if you follow the games industry, one thing you want to pay attention is the distinction between sell-in and sell-through. A lot of companies will quote sell-in and they won't talk about sell-through. It's pretty easy to sell in. The retailers show up, they say, hey, I want to get X copies of your game. You give them X copies of your game. It may or may not sell, and then the publisher has to take those copies back if they don't. Sell-through is a lot more meaningful. So something to pay attention to on this slide is the red is Asia and rest of the world, and you can see the big jump from Starcraft sales, which was released in North America and then gradually released everywhere else in the world. Diablo 2 was actually released everywhere, although it wasn't released in, we didn't actually go and translate the game into the Asian languages on that first pass, but they were available in English. So it was available right away. And then we've been getting more sophisticated as time goes on. A lot of people talk about succeeding in Asia or in different places, and they talk about that the way to succeed is to customize your games for the local tastes. I call this a myth because I'm not sure that that's the best approach, and it's not the approach that we take at Blizzard. What we do is we certainly look at what people like and what people don't like, but our perspective is that there are different play styles, but those different play styles pretty much exist everywhere, just maybe in different concentrations. You might have more people in Korea, say, that like to play player versus player in World of Warcraft, and you might have more people in the US that like player versus environment style of play. But there are people in both places that like both. And so we try to take that into account when designing our games. And so we don't have multiple. The gameplay for World of Warcraft is the same everywhere. We do localize the game, and we'll add things that are interesting. Like for instance, we added kimchi for the Koreans so that they can eat kimchi and things like that. But the gameplay is the same. And so I think rather than spending time making 15 versions of a game that appeal to all these different local tastes, you make one version that appeals to the wide range of players and is a superior game. And some of these things, objectively, you can look at and say, well, yeah, they're playing a particular way, but this way is superior and makes the game more fun, and that's what we should do, and we shouldn't try to make our game worse just because it looks like that's what's going to be more popular. You do have to be sensitive to different cultures, though. And so what this is this is a panda. And it turns out our art director loves pandas and likes drawing them, and we added pandas as a race to Warcraft 3. And the thing is, he also likes Japanese culture and samurais and Japanese weapons and armor, and so he drew the pandas wearing Japanese armor with holding a katana. And it turns out that our Chinese players really didn't like seeing their pandas dressed in Japanese clothing. And so they let us know, which was kind of how we found out that we had a lot of Chinese players. And we had a lot of them, and then they were vocal. And so we actually changed the art. We changed the panda. We dressed them in Chinese weapons and armor, and they really appreciated that we listened to their thoughts on the matter. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about World of Warcraft from an operations standpoint. When it came time to release World of Warcraft, we knew that we needed to set up local operations in different regions to properly support our players in those regions. And so we decided to set up a direct operation that Blizzard runs, basically Blizzard offices out of North America, Europe, and South Korea. We established full customer support, server infrastructure, and those offices also handle marketing, selling, administrative functions, and public relations. In other markets, due to various reasons, because maybe our brand wasn't as strong there, or due to government restrictions on what we can do, we partnered with local companies. In China, we partnered with a company called the Nine Interactive. In Taiwan, we partnered with Softworld. Our partners handle customer service for us in those regions, and also the server infrastructure. They also handle localization and marketing. This enabled us to get into China and Taiwan probably a lot quicker than we would have, because the amount of staff you would need to support World of Warcraft is just enormous, and also the distraction to us trying to run our business in these other areas is just not something that would have been feasible. So this is a kind of graphical view of what that looks like, our different offices around the world. We now have 2 offices in North America. We just recently opened an office here in Austin that's handling customer service. So we actually have customer service being handled out of Austin and out of Irvine right now. So there's a bit of redundancy if one site were to go down for some reason. And we're going to do the same thing in Europe. We're setting up an office in Ireland. Okay, global challenges. So there were actually quite a few challenges that we encountered with World of Warcraft. First one was estimating demand, which is really an impossible thing to do. There weren't a lot of other examples to look at to figure out, okay, well, this game is it's kind of like EverQuest. Maybe that was the closest one. So we looked at EverQuest numbers. We also looked at historical sales of other Blizzard titles. We looked at some of our past titles, and the game we had released just previous was Warcraft 3, which was fastest selling PC game of all time, and sold great. And so we thought, okay, well, we figure that no matter what, we know that World of Warcraft is not going to sell faster than Warcraft 3. It's the fastest selling PC game of all time. It's a free game. You don't have to pay anything after you buy it. World of Warcraft, we're going to charge a monthly fee of $15. That's going to alienate some people. They're not going to rush out on the first day and buy the game. And it turns out this is the local Fry's Electronics, and we did a midnight opening. We had the development team go over to Fry's, and thousands of people showed up that night. And we're like, oh my God, maybe we're wrong about this. And it turns out we were. World of Warcraft sold faster than Warcraft 3 out the gate and continued to sell faster. So we had to actually stop shipping boxes to retail multiple times during that first 6-month period. And if any of you tried to buy World of Warcraft, it was not necessarily easy to find always during that period. There were times that the retailers would sell out, and we'd ship more boxes when we could, and then they'd sell out again. And we had to ramp up our customer service staff, our infrastructure, and all of these things take time. This is a look at the increase in World of Warcraft players for the first, I guess that's about a year and a half. And so you can see pretty rapid growth. We're now over 9 million around the world. So HR means human resources. Turns out human resources, and what I mean by that is the human resources department in a fast-growing company is really important. And our human resources department was not ready to handle the kind of growth that we needed to experience. Recruiting, training, even just handling things like benefits and employee issues, we needed to scale up our human resources department. We needed to scale up our entire business. In order to do that, you need a good human resources department. So we weren't prepared, and it took us a little while, but we finally managed to catch up. An MMORPG is a massively multiplayer online role-playing game, and it turns out running a massively multiplayer online game is not just about game development. It's about 24/7 IT, customer service, community management. It's about a lot of things that you don't necessarily think about when you think about a game developer. But all of these things impact the player experience. Your ability to get servers back online when there's a hardware failure, your ability to keep the community informed, your ability to deal with the thousands and thousands, and we're even talking hundreds of thousands of customer contacts that we get through customer service in a good way, means that you have to be a sophisticated customer service company. So we consciously decided we needed to transition to becoming a global service company, and I think we've made a lot of progress there. And I think this is kind of right now for Blizzard one of the major priorities of our company is to take ourselves to the next level and to be a world-class global service company. So one lesson, along those lines was communication. Communicate or people will make stuff up, and that's not just for the games business. That's for everything. I think you'll find everywhere in your life. It's not just business even. Communicate or people will make stuff up, and they will make stuff up. In our case, they will make stuff up publicly, and they'll post it on our forums, and they'll all be making stuff up unless we step in and we tell them what's really going on. Also, running the company, I have a lot of employees now. If we don't communicate with the employees, they will also make stuff up. Everybody seems to make stuff up if they don't hear what's really happening. So we found that we needed a process for dealing with crisis situations. When there was a problem that prevented people from playing World of Warcraft, and there were problems, and there will always be problems that come up over time. It's software, and software, when you release new versions of it, isn't always perfect. So when that happens, and people can't play, they want to know why. Well, the community team, whose responsibility it is to communicate with the players, they don't know why. Because the programmer who created the game doesn't know why yet. He's looking into the problem. He's in his office, the door's closed, and he's typing away trying to figure out why it is that the server keeps crashing. And so at first, the community team basically would not say anything, and people would wig out on the forums. And so then we started developing, okay, we need to have people, we call them producers, whose basically their role is to communicate with the community team and keep them informed what's going on and kind of insulate the programmer so he can get his job done, but make sure that the community team knows the scoop. And sometimes that means we don't know yet. We think this is the problem, but we don't know yet. We'll give you an answer in the next hour. Okay, and so we decided, okay, well, that's what we need to tell people. We're looking into the problem. We know about the problem. That's a big one. We know about the problem. We're looking into it, and check back at this time, and we'll know more. And then at least people wouldn't be hitting our website every 2 minutes, which is not good because that can take down the website if you've got millions of people doing that. So, and then another kind of corollary to that is all of our international staff, which is not in the same building as the development team, and they feel pretty isolated, and sometimes we're even sleeping when they're having problems, and they also need to be kept informed and in the loop in real time, and so we need to develop a 24/7 system for doing this. It's kind of a in a different direction, but interesting and important. Turns out that if you can make money doing something, even if it adversely impacts other people and their fun, you'll find that people go and do that thing. And so if you can, say, sell gold to other people for real money out in the real world, that you'll have businesses start up in areas of the world where labor is cheap, and they'll hire a bunch of people and spend all of their time 24/7 going around to the areas in the game where you can get the most gold and do that and sell it. And the people who are trying to play the game, that gets in their way of their fun. So we try to avoid having these financial incentives. We try to avoid making it a lucrative thing to do to run businesses like these. It's something that we're constantly working at. The other thing that it does, as it becomes more difficult to actually farm the gold in the game, is they'll just go out and steal accounts if they can. So they'll write Trojan programs that they'll try to get you to download, and if you download them, they'll steal your passwords so that they can log in, take all the gold off your characters, and sell that. And so we, try to work to make that more difficult too. But I just raise this because it's something that we have to think a lot about. And anytime you're dealing with large groups of people and trying to create a safe, fun environment, you have to look out for these kind of incentives that might incentivize behavior that's not beneficial to the whole. Credit card fraud's another one. Who knew? But it turns out, well, they want to farm gold, right? But they don't want to have to pay us to do that. So they'll buy lists of stolen credit cards and use those credit cards to finance their accounts so that they can farm the gold and not have to pay us. And then we have to, well, the guy who owns the credit card's not happy about that. He just got a charge on his card. He doesn't know what that is. World of Warcraft, what is that? Then we have to go and charge back on the card to recollect the money. Visa and MasterCard don't like that. And the funny thing about that is they don't like that, and they have these thresholds that if you have a certain number of chargebacks in a certain period of time, they'll actually fine us for charging cards that were stolen. I used to think that was their job. It's kind of funny. Testing is such an important thing that I thought it deserved its own bullet point. Software is complicated, it's large, it's big, and it's very difficult to find all of the problems. So everyone tests games at Blizzard. Actually, not just from a bug standpoint, but also just for a gameplay fun standpoint. We look for things that, like I mentioned, you want to make the games accessible to players, so easy to understand. So sometimes what happens in game development is if you don't have fresh eyes constantly looking at the project, then the people who are playing it, well, they know why things are, because that's the way I know what I'm supposed to do here, I know what I'm supposed to do there, I know what I have to do, and they tend to go on the same paths in playing the game, and a new person who wasn't in the design meeting when they decided a certain thing, well, he doesn't know that. And so he comes into the game and he's like, well, that's stupid. Why do I have to do this? I want to do this. And we tend to learn a ton by having other game developers play games that they didn't design. We also run a public beta where we let the outside community play our games before we release it, and we tend to learn a ton by doing that too. Some things you can't find if a small number of people are playing in an online game. Some things you only find when you put a certain amount of load on the servers. A test site. So we're patching World of Warcraft all the time. We're adding new content for players to keep the game interesting. We're fixing bugs. What we found is even when we've finished testing, there's no substitute from having thousands of people go through and play the game and do all sorts of random things and watch what happens. And so we now have a test site, and all of our patches go through the test site process, but we launched without one. Even though that might have saved us some money initially, because the hardware is not cheap, I think that the lesson there was it's worth the hardware, because you're talking about everybody's gameplay experience, and you want to make sure that your updates are as solid as possible. So when it came time to launch the first expansion to World of Warcraft, we really wanted to get things right this time. So we actually upgraded the entire infrastructure for the World of Warcraft servers around the world, addressing all of the bottlenecks that we saw along the way. We added extra capacity for day one. We didn't want to make the same mistake about forecasting that we made the first time, and we wanted to basically, we had ideas of how many people would want to play, but if we were wrong, we still wanted to be prepared, and things went a whole lot more smoothly. I had our customer support manager tell me after we launched the game that the expansion, that to customer service, it felt like an ordinary patch to them. It didn't feel like a new product, which is like the biggest compliment you can have when releasing something like this. We also did midnight openings around the world, so people in Europe could actually play the same day as the North American players, and Korea very shortly thereafter. And I have a video to show you guys of the midnight openings. They were actually really cool because it's like every hour a new store would open at midnight, and we'd hear reports on our forums of people who went and pictures and things like that. So let me show you that. I don't know what the audio is going to be like. You guys may need to adjust it. This is Europe.
This is the first time that we're doing a midnight opening in Europe.
It brings people together from all over Europe.
I've been standing here for like 11 hours now, and he's been standing here for like 13, 14 hours. I'm in it for the role playing, for all the fun of being someone else in a different world. So we've been to Ireland and England to meet people who are playing the game. For me it's more a social thing because I've got all my friends in the guild and so on.
I think it's really nice meeting people from different countries.
It's probably not very common to have mothers and daughters playing. we do, and we enjoy it. It's the social part of the game, you know, talking to a lot of other people, tactics with a lot of different kind of persons, you know. She has to help me all the time, because she knows a lot more than I do.
What features of the Burning Crusade are you looking forward to most?
The new continent and the new race.
And the flying mounts.
First I'm gonna reach level 70 and then I'm gonna try some new raid instances.
Do you play together in World of Warcraft?
Nope. Ich bin natürlich ein Hodler, ein Underdwarf Warlock. Ja, ganz böse. Gamer sind geil.
Are you excited about the Burning Crusade?
Oh yeah.
Are you looking forward to it?
WoW. Was sonst?
I have been looking forward to it ever since I heard about it. Our whole guild has been preparing for it for months.
There's quite massive turnouts, like millions of people here.
I have to admit, I didn't imagine there would be quite this many people.
I already gave up my lessons today to come here.
Oh, that's
To play this game, I seriously gave up my lessons to drive to come here and play for the next 5 days, and then I've got my driving test.
We are prepared.
Die ersten Spieler gehen heraus. Bitte, Leute. Die ersten.
So if you could play one game for the rest of your life, what would it be?
It's gonna be World of Warcraft.
Gotta be World of Warcraft.
So let's see. I guess let me show one more video, and then we can go to some questions. Korea is a really important market for Blizzard, and let's see. It started really for us with Starcraft. We released Starcraft in 1998, and Korea was just coming out of a recession, and the stars really aligned for us. Starcraft actually to this day has never been localized into Korean. It's in English. They're playing in English. But Starcraft started to become popular in Korea around the same time that game rooms started popping up everywhere. And you know, it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. I don't know which one was responsible more than the other, but Starcraft was the game of choice to be playing in these game rooms. And there are about 20,000 game rooms in South Korea. To put that in perspective, there are 30,000 McDonald's in the whole world. Okay, so that's a lot of game rooms. It's a very popular activity to go and play games in game rooms, and StarCraft's still one of the most popular games. It's a very competitive game. It's very well balanced. You have 3 races to choose from, but there's no one race that's the most powerful. And even today, when you look at professional StarCraft tournaments, and there still are many that go on in Korea, there's no one race that dominates. You see professional players playing all 3 races. I think that's really been an important factor that's helped StarCraft. So StarCraft's popular in Korea both as a game that people like to play, and also as kind of a spectator sport. So they actually televise StarCraft tournaments. They're televised on cable, and I think there's like 3 TV channels that broadcast StarCraft tournaments. So we've paid particular attention to the Korean gaming market. We've visited there over the years several times, and every time we go, it's always, you know, hey, when's StarCraft 2 coming out? You know, well, we'll let you guys know. And so when it came time to announce StarCraft 2, we decided, okay, well, we have to do this in Korea, you know, and we'll invite press from all over the world to come and kind of witness this firsthand, because there's really nothing like it. And so we had been running a invitational tournament. We call it the Blizzard Worldwide Invitational, where we invite the top professional gamers from around the world to come and compete. And that's kind of our way of officially supporting the professional gaming, you know. And so the first two were in Korea. We decided to hold the third one in Seoul. We rented the Olympic Park where the Seoul Olympics were held. And we had some of the top Korean pop bands come and play. We invited the top pro gamers, and we said, and we're going to have this, we're going to have an exciting announcement. That's what we said, you know, and which is kind of code for we're going to announce StarCraft 2, so you might want to come. So anyway, here's a video from the Worldwide Invitational, which was an incredible event.
타투라고 그러는데 재밌을 것 같아요. 리자드가 만드니까.
I've been sitting in the darkness, but the sunlight's creeping in. Now the ice is slowly melting in my soul and in my skin. All the good times, my friend, yeah, are coming around again. Oh yeah.
It is my honor to present to you Blizzard's newest game.
리자드 월드와이드 인비테이셔널의 개막을 선포합니다.
즐거운 시간 보내고 계십니까?
진행을 맡게 된 조용입니다. 반갑습니다.
For years, you think for sure that's all you've got to endure.
위치도 좋습니다, 강민 선수. 양치한 처음 멈추지 못한 것 지인대 세 번.
워크래프트 최종 결승 대결입니다.
두 번째 세트에서 기세를 올린 선수가 마지은 선수가 될 것인지, 아니면 김태경 선수가 될 것인지. 어떻게 보면 정말 정의적 스페셜리스트 같아요.
폐막을 선포합니다.
안녕하세요. 반갑습니다. 앱입니다.
여러분 멋있다. 다 같이 뛰어보자. 워터 돼.
기타 이벤트들 해서 이번 대회가 굉장히 성공적으로 치러진 것 같습니다. 어렸을 때부터 스타 되게 좋아했거든요. 그거 했는데 이거 스타트 나온 데서 와봤는데요. 진짜 좋습니다. 지방에서 이거 하나 풀려서 여기까지 쫓아왔는데 너무 좋은 것 같아요. 월드와이드 인비테이셔널은 꼭 한번 와볼 만한 행사라고 생각됩니다.
Okay. Sure. You guys, yeah.
I just had a quick question about, you mentioned it was huge in South Korea. How about, like, do you know anything about the North American, or North Korean, like, market, if there is one? Or?
There isn't one.
Okay.
Yep. The economy is not at a level that they're playing a lot of computer games. Yeah.
What's it like having a giant vault of money that you swim in like Scrooge McDuck?
I don't know.
So, your website is one of the largest websites out of all the game developers. How do you feel that that's moved you as a company? How do you think that's worked with you?
How is having a large website?
Yeah, how is your website?
I mean, like our community?
Yeah.
I think having I think we've got a great community, a very loyal community that's very interested in our products. It doesn't seem like, it seems like they're very interested in other things that we're doing, not necessarily just one specific thing. I think having Battle.net, having the game service, and the community around Battle.net really helps us because it enabled us to communicate with our community. So we can let them know information about up and coming things, and there's a place for them to go and exchange information with each other. So I think it's been extremely positive. I don't know if that's exactly the answer you're looking for. Okay. Yeah.
Before you announced Starcraft 2, there was a lot of speculation that you were going to announce a different online game like World of Warcraft. And I was actually surprised when you announced Starcraft 2 because even knowing how successful Starcraft 1 had been and Diablo 2, I still couldn't make the finances work in my mind that it would possibly be as a fraction of the money that you could potentially earn from another World of Warcraft style game. What was the deciding factor there?
That we wanted to make StarCraft 2 and we wanted to play it, and we were really excited about, that we thought we could make a great game around StarCraft 2. StarCraft was an aging game. It's a 2D game. People are still playing it, but we wanted to give them something that they could play for years and years to come. We love the StarCraft universe. We wanted to continue making games in the StarCraft universe, and I think the game will do very well. You're probably right. It probably isn't going to be as profitable as World of Warcraft, but I don't know. It'll still be worth doing.
I had like two questions about World of Warcraft. One is how much more time and effort did it take to develop this game as opposed to a single player game like Diablo? And second, out of all the millions of subscriptions, how much of that money goes towards just simple maintenance and support as opposed to
I can't answer financial questions like that because we're part of a public company and they don't break out our financials. Okay. The first part of the question was, can you repeat the first part?
Just how long?
Oh, how long did it take? Well, we started working on World of Warcraft in '99, and we released it in 2004. It's a huge project, way larger and more complicated than anything we had done before that. A lot of moving parts. And even then, we didn't fully comprehend how large and complicated it was, because it's not just about the game development either. Yeah.
Can you answer how many people you have dedicated to maintenance for World of Warcraft?
It's kind of hard to break that down. I can tell you that we've got over 100 people on the core World of Warcraft development team. And then there's IT people and QA people and customer service people and everything. There are, I believe we're over 2,600 Blizzard worldwide now. Yeah.
So you mentioned communication being a big deal, especially internally, and I'm curious, you've got all these locations around the world and you've got partners. How do you do that? How do you keep I understand the forums for external communication, but how do you do it especially, how do you coordinate everything with partners? I mean, is everything done in English? Is it all?
Yeah, English is the official language of the company. All the business is done in English. Let's see. I mean, the first thing that we had to do was get a whole lot better at how we communicated over email. Email is our best tool for communication. And we needed to become a lot more systematic about our email lists. You know, when we basically went through all the different topics and departments and everything and put together global email lists with, you know, if you're going to send out something to the community team, here are all the people that need to be on that, and you basically use a predefined list. You know, before that we were just typing in, okay, well, I know this person needs to be on here, and this person, that person, this person, and we'd leave somebody off, and you know, you don't do that if you have a pre-made list that includes all the right people. We also have regular meetings. We make a point for senior management to visit all the different offices regularly throughout the year. And I think just this past month, actually, we had a global management offsite where we had our top 65 global leaders basically meet in Vegas for a few days. I mean, and aside from all of the business talk that we did, I think it's important just for them to get to know each other, because then they're going to be a lot more comfortable raising issues with each other throughout the rest of the year.
How many like core designers do you have in the company? Because like sort of the spin off that question is your properties all have a very like an incredible unifying design behind all of them. Like the way that Warcraft 3 works is influenced by Diablo, and the way that World of Warcraft works is influenced by Diablo and Warcraft 3, and the trees all work the same way. And
well, I think some of that comes from just that you know, we all play all the different games, and so what you'll have is, you know, the Diablo team will like something that the Starcraft team is doing, and they'll incorporate it into the design for the game, or you know, vice versa. That happens all the time. We have a design team. I don't know off the top of my head how many people are in it, but it is led by our VP of game design, Rob Pardo. Let's see, the back.
Do you ever plan on doing development out of your Austin office, or will it always just be customer service?
So our philosophy on that is we're a lot better having development centralized in one location. I know other companies are able to have development spread out everywhere. We're just not very good at that. So all of our game development is in Irvine, and will continue to be in Irvine for the foreseeable future.
In your opinion, do you believe that it's possible to make a AAA blockbuster title with minimal crunch?
I think it's very difficult. Now, I mean, I think it's possible, sure, without extended, prolonged crunch, but I think that there's something that happens that you just don't know until you get towards the end of the project, where you're able to actually play stuff and see how everything fits together, and you get a lot of people that are actually able to have meaningful gameplay experiences, and you tend to, the amount of data you get during that phase, you can either act on it or not. And if you want to act on it and you still want to ship your game in a reasonable time frame, you've got to work a little bit harder. I think it's kind of like you've got a final coming up on, you know, a week from Friday. Why don't you just learn everything in the first week, 2 weeks of class, and you don't have to go to class anymore? You really can't, because you don't know the foundation, you don't know the middle stuff, and then once you start learning everything, you can get into a deeper level, and that always, I don't know, for me, always tended to come to a head on the night before the final. I learned a whole lot that night, though, and I wouldn't have done as well if I hadn't studied a little bit extra hard.
Seeing the success of competitive gaming in South Korea, do you think there's any potential for that kind of success in
Well, I think there are other markets that are, well, there's certainly other markets where the game rooms are very popular, Taiwan and China. China has 200,000 or so game rooms. Gaming is huge in China and just growing in popularity all the time. Gaming is very popular in Taiwan. Some of the games have higher concurrency in Taiwan than they have in Korea. So, so I guess the answer is yes.
How about North America? Do you think there's any potential for professional gaming at a competitive level here?
I think there is. Yeah, I do. I mean, I think, I mean, look at poker. I think poker is a great example of a game that wasn't as popular as it is now just a few years ago, and they made it a great spectator sport, right? Now that we can see the whole cards of the players, it's a whole lot more exciting to watch poker. Now you've got poker televised all the time, World Series of Poker, World Poker Tour, all of these things. So we have to figure out how to make it fun to watch live computer gaming. Once we do that, I think it'll become popular.
Your initial sale of the company sounded like a really good move with all the resources that they offered. But now that you're a bigger company, I mean, have you found any negatives to being owned or any regrets to that?
I think it's one of those questions that's really impossible. You know, what if we hadn't sold? What if we held on to the company and pursued a different track? Would things have turned out differently? You know, I really don't know. I do think that selling the company when we did accelerated what we were able to do. And timing is very important in this industry. So, you know, we were able to find opportunities and pursue them at the right times. And so we don't really second guess that decision. I look back and it's been a pretty good ride.
How do you, like, as a smaller company, I know you haven't been a part of a small company for a while, but as a part of a smaller company, how do you resist being pushed to deadlines by your publisher without having the proverbial swimming pool?
Okay, well, we are the publisher. So I think that's important. Blizzard is the publisher. Our distributor doesn't dictate deadlines to us. We tell them when we expect to be finished, and we update them along the way. I think that it's a pretty powerful argument to say that, hey, the worst thing that we can do is put out something that will damage the Blizzard brand. That's the absolute worst thing we can do. And the people I've worked with long enough, even at our parent company, that they recognize that, and they're very supportive. Yeah.
What's your opinion on innovation versus execution? Is it better to do something first or to do it the best?
It's better to do it the best. We're not always first. We do try to do things right, and we try to learn from, you know, mistakes that other people make, and both mistakes and things that they're doing right. We try to learn as much as possible from what's working and what's not working. But no, rushing something to market and not having it be great is not, you know, that's called the bleeding edge. Yeah.
In an industry of secrets, how do you share technology?
How do we share technology with who?
With other game developing countries, or, you know, oh, hey, there's this new way of doing graphics. Do you just go out and research it, or do you develop it all in-house?
Well, we try to stay up on the latest technology. I don't think, I guess there is a balance there with, you know, if we come up with something that we think is totally new and unique, I think we'll probably guard that pretty closely. But there tends to be, you know, as breakthroughs occur, the knowledge does get passed around. Again, you're asking good questions, and I don't know if I'm giving you good answers.
A regarding the gold farming problem that you raised during your talk, it seems like there are some technical fixes that could strongly reduce that. You could put a sharp upper limit on the amount of gold that a player is allowed to sell in every 24-hour period, or you could make it so that there's an anonymous open market instead of player-to-player transactions. It's that sort of thing. And I wonder if you could talk about whether you've rejected that for the reasons why you haven't done that, and whether you think that the gold farming has in some way helped popularize the game.
Well, we do talk about that stuff all the time, and I think we have done things along those lines, and I think we'll continue evaluating those types of moves based on how they impact the innocent game player. Let's see, there was a second part of that.
Do you think that the prospect of making money in World of Warcraft has enlarged your audience?
No, I don't think it has.
So you mentioned your Asian partners dealing with the servers and all that kind of stuff. Do they handle the financial piece of that, the billing of the players? And do they share that credit risk with you, or do you bear the full brunt of the fraud?
You're talking about our partners in... Yeah. The way it works, we have a licensing deal with the Nine and Softworld, and so they basically buy game time from us and resell it. So their relationship, their payment relationship with the customers, it's up to them to collect. Now in China, actually, and in Taiwan also, they're not paying with credit cards. They're actually buying game cards. So it's not being done by credit. So they don't necessarily run into the same kind of fraud issues that we do.
You have a very large company relative to a lot of the companies. And I assume that most of those people are very passionate about what they're working on. How do you organize your company in such a way that people have buy-in, but you also have strong leadership as well?
That is a great question. So we try to have small teams, as small as we can, reasonably. We try to have an environment where people are comfortable and feel compelled to provide their input on different things. You know, if you're a programmer and you think that there's a game design issue related to the game, we encourage people to speak up about those things, not just sit in their office and do their particular task. We go through, like I said, during our internal alpha period where the whole company is testing, and we encourage feedback, and we provide forums and mechanisms for the development teams to take that feedback and consolidate it. But we do think it's very important for people to feel ownership over what we're creating, and feel ownership over protecting our Blizzard name. You know, even if they're not on the Starcraft 2 team, but they're on a different team, when Starcraft 2 comes out with the Blizzard brand on it, that's going to impact them as well. And it's going to impact the reputation of the company, and it's going to affect what people think about the company when it comes time to release the game they are working on. So I think that kind of culture is something that we want everybody to feel. And as we've grown, it has become definitely something that we've spent a lot of time thinking about.
As you have released more and more games, it seems like each game has had sort of longer and longer legs, longer and longer lifetimes. With WoW being your last game, are you worried about the prospect of eventually having to compete with yourselves, essentially?
So, you know, if you read any business book, they usually say something about that if somebody's going to cannibalize your market, then it should be you, right? So, I mean, it's not like the gaming industry is going to stop. People are going to keep making games, and games are going to keep hopefully getting better and better. And so we're not so worried about, hey, what if our next game is better than World of Warcraft? Will people stop playing it? Hopefully our next game is great and people will play it. Hopefully they'll play both. But mostly we're just focused on making our next games as good as we can make them, and we expect our competition to do the same.
What kinds of games do you like to play?
Actually, I love poker. I love all forms of it, Texas Hold'em, but all forms of Texas Hold'em, whether it's live or online. I think that the government should come to its senses and make online poker legal again. I'm playing World of Warcraft. Love Guitar Hero. Looking forward to Guitar Hero 3. Looking forward to Rock Band.
How awesome is your character?
It's probably not as awesome as some of yours. Yeah.
You've talked about always building the Blizzard brand. Have you ever felt that desire sometimes, makes you play it safe or forces your hand, prevents you from making some decisions, riskier decisions that you might want to?
I think it's a good test, and in doing it, it forces us to put on the hat of, okay, what is going to meet or exceed the expectations our players have of us, and we know our players have very high expectations of us, and we want to make sure we continually meet those expectations. We don't want to disappoint them. Does that make us play it safe? I don't know. I mean, was World of Warcraft a huge risk, or was it something that was a no-brainer? I don't know. I don't think we all felt that it was as big of a risk as probably a lot of other people, because that's what we wanted to play. We saw the potential there. I think there are certain types of games that maybe we would like to play that probably wouldn't meet our quality standards of what the Blizzard brand has come to represent, and might be considered a brand withdrawal to some people, and that maybe would prevent us from doing them because maybe they're not epic enough. So in that sense, I guess yeah, trying to protect the brand maybe does prevent us from doing certain types of games that just don't kind of raise to the standard of being what we would consider a Blizzard quality title.
As you scaled up to a global software developer, were there any business models that you used to analyze that, or did you just do it by trial and error?
I think we, well, when you say business models, do you mean market models or organizational models?
Organizational models.
Okay. Well, since there are a number of us talking about organization and different people who have different experience and have seen what other companies do, I think we did kind of look at, what other companies were doing and what seemed to be working, but maybe even more than that, we just kind of looked at what the organization needed at the time and what the skill sets of our leaders were, and come up with a structure that we thought was extensible.
Did you target any new hires to help you with that, or did you grow it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think basically scaling up our human resources department, our recruiting department, our international operations department, which is kind of the hub of all this. So we scaled up every single division in the entire company, everything. So we identified a lot of spots that where we needed help. Okay, so should we go to...
I just have one more question. You're famous for shipping when it's done. Are you getting better at estimating when it's going to be done?
I don't know. Games are getting bigger and more complicated, and it's getting harder to estimate when it's going to be done. So I guess no.
Okay, so I think everybody needs a little break at this point.
Sounds good.
So okay, especially the guest. So let's take 10 minutes and maybe 15. We'll see.
10's fine with me.
Okay, 10 it is. We'll come back and I'll ask about 5 questions in the lightning round, and then I think we're going to be done. Holy cow. All right. You guys hit so much with those questions and with that talk that I'm going to be doing some editing on the fly, so we'll see how this goes today. I want to start by going back to the beginning, and I'm not just talking about 1991. Where did you come from? What's your background? How did that prepare you for a career as a video game god and the fourth most important person on the web?
Nothing prepared me for that. So let's see. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, in just north of LA. Let's see. I always liked. I was always interested in how things worked. You know, gadgets, radio, TV, computers, whatever. I wanted to know how it all worked. It was a big mystery. You know, the microwave. How does it do that? You know, everything. TVs transmitting the signals over the ether to my TV. So that just always fascinated me. I was like, anytime we got any new electronic device, I would break open the manual and I'd read the whole thing and know everything about it and how it could talk to other devices that we had. That was also something that really interested me. When I was in 6th grade, the Atari 2600 was out. People were starting to get that. Actually, so you don't need to know my whole history of games, but in 6th grade, it came time. I wanted a video game system. Okay, so my dad was teaching us about, you know, okay, well, first you have to shop around, see what's available, and then you make a purchase decision, right? And so there were a couple of different options back then. There was the Atari, which everybody seemed to be getting. It was cheaper than this other system, which was called the Bally Professional Arcade. And it was, Fedco sold both of them. You know, and I went in there, and Bally had better games. It had better graphics. It had a better controller. It was just superior in every way, as far as I could tell. You know, I'm a 6th grade kid, so I knew. And so, you know, every time we'd go to Fedco, I would go over to the computer area, and I would play Bally games the whole time. And it was like $250, I think, which was way more than I could afford. So my brother, sister, and I each put together our whatever we had saved up, and my dad made up the difference, and we bought this thing. And so they came out with a basic cartridge for the Bally Professional Arcade, and it let you basically program in BASIC on this thing. And it had a keypad on the console, and you'd have a plastic overlay so that you could get all of the keywords for BASIC. So like, you know, blue 5 was go to, you know, yellow 5 was if, that sort of thing. And so I learned BASIC by reading the Bally Basic manual, and then found out that there was a guy up in the Bay Area somewhere who was publishing a newsletter for the Bally Basic cartridge, and he'd publish programs people would send in. So every month I'd get his newsletter, and I remember, you know, I'd get his newsletter, and it was so exciting because he'd have all these programs in it, and I'd key them in on the thing, and I'd run them, and there would always be bugs, and so I'd have to debug the program, and then in order to save it, it had a cassette adapter that stored the data to my cassettes at 300 baud, which was really slow, and you could hear it, you know, made a high-pitched, awful sound, and you know, I'd store my programs on that, and I'd load them up, and that's kind of my first exposure to games and our programming anyway.
And were you part of the D&D generation?
Yeah.
Everybody played Dungeons and Dragons, huh?
Yeah, so I went out and bought the dungeon manual, the monster manual, the DM's guide, and the player's handbook. I read them all. We had a few friends who would play D&D, although we played basic D&D. We never really graduated to advanced. I don't need to volunteer that kind of information.
Okay. Hey, the second edition of the basic D&D was pretty good. So how did you hook up with the other Blizzard founders? I know you all went to UCLA together. Were you gaming buddies, just buddies fraternity brothers? How did that
Actually, I
happen?
didn't know Frank. I knew Alan from school. So the last year I was at UCLA, I was taking, I actually had 2 classes with Alan. One was engineering economy class, economics class, and the other one was a class on computer architecture. And Alan and I had there was one day, we were, I think we had met each other before this, but there was one day in particular, Alan and I were both sitting in the computer lab. They had these X Windows terminals, which is kind of like Unix, this graphical system. Anyway, we were the only 2 people sitting in there, and Alan went to print something, which the printer was like 2 floors, in another part of the building. So he went to go get his printout, and he locked his terminal. Type lock, you type in a password, it's locked now. And he's gone for a while, and I look over, and I guess after 20 minutes or so, the lock times out, and it puts him back at a prompt, right? And so it's just sitting there. And I'm like, he's still not back. Well, I can't leave it like that, right? So I go over and I relock it, and go back and sit down at my terminal and wait for him to come back. He comes back, sits down at the terminal, types in his password, and it unlocks. So I'm looking at that, and he's working away. I'm like, how did you do that? He said, do what? I just typed in my password. Why? Well, what was your password? He said, I'm not going to tell you. I said, well, was it Joe? And he said, yes. How did you know? So I told him, because he just unlocked the terminal. He didn't know. So we just sat there for like half an hour just laughing. What are the odds? Anyway, that's kind of...
So what possessed you 2 guys, or you 3 guys, to go from, I just graduated from college, I got a graduation gift from my mother or something, let's start a game company?
Okay, well, Alan had been working in the game industry for a few years before. He had actually been published a few times. He had written some original titles. He was very driven. He knew what he was going to do. When he graduated, he was going to start up a game company. He got it into his mind, and he was looking around for people, people who were going to help him do this or whatever. He got it into his mind that maybe I was one of those people. And he started, the recruiting effort on trying to convince me to go into business with him and start up this company. And I wasn't really a computer software guy. I was studying computer hardware at the time. I was really interested in computer software, but I didn't really think I was ready for something like that. So I kept telling him, yeah, no, I'm not really ready. I went and got a job at Western Digital writing test software for their network cards. And when it came time for Alan to graduate, he graduated 6 months after me. Again, he's like, hey, Mike, I need a partner now, but this opportunity is not going to stay open forever. So, you really need to act if this is something you're interested in, because, I may not need you in a couple years. And I said, yeah, but, I don't know very much about game development. He said, it's not rocket science. We're both smart. If we put our minds together, we can do anything we want, and I'll teach you what you need to know. And the other part of that I thought was very compelling is his observation that there are very few industries, if you think about it, where a couple guys can go with very low seed capital, very low investment, and just spend their time working on something and create something that thousands of people then can go and enjoy. There just aren't that many examples of that. You can't go and decide you're going to create a car company or an airplane company or build houses, or I don't know, you could write a book, I suppose, but that's not as fun as games. So
So it's the 2 of you now, then the 3 of you. Were
Yeah.
you it when you got started?
Well, so Alan knew Frank, and Alan recruited Frank. Frank was working at Rockwell at the time, because Frank and I were both out of school by the time Alan graduated. There were a couple of other guys that that Alan knew that we initially fed some subcontract work to while they were still at UCLA. There was a guy I knew, Pat Wyatt, who was in my fraternity, who we ended up having him do some contract work for us. Pat did a Windows version of Battle Chess while he was still at school. And then, you know, when a few of these guys graduated, they came and worked for us.
So how does a startup with no track record? Well, I guess if Alan had actually worked on some stuff, maybe that was the end. But how do you get that first deal, even to do ports?
So Alan knew Brian Fargo
Okay,
at
there you go.
Interplay.
All right.
Okay, so
It's all who you know.
A lot of our initial business came from Interplay.
And you know, a lot of people say that starting with ports is even today a great way to get a company
I
started.
totally agree.
So, so that's still a useful strategy even today, you think?
I think so.
Yeah. But it doesn't seem like, maybe I'm just not aware of it, but it doesn't seem like a lot of companies have made the leap from we're a port house to we do original IP. When you started pitching stuff like Lost Vikings and Rock and Roll Racing, do people go, no, you're a port house. What are you talking about?
No, because I think, I mean, Lost Vikings and Rock and Roll Racing were both games we did with Interplay. And so Interplay was familiar with our capabilities. Brian knew Alan very well. And so when we came up with some of these ideas and pitched them, it was from a credible source.
So you do Lost Vikings, you do Rock and Roll Racing. Out of nowhere, one year you go from I've been making games for 10 years by that point. Never heard of you guys and loved your stuff, to winning Developer of the Year awards.
Yeah.
And then almost instantly get acquired. Is there more you want to say about the acquisition thing? Is it?
Well,
I
we weren't.
get so confused about that.
We
stuff.
weren't looking to be acquired. We did want to take the company to the next level, though. We wanted to go from developing games for publishers, as original games for publishers. We wanted to go from those development deals to actually self-publishing. So some sort of affiliated labels thing like Interplay. Interplay was our model, right? Alan watched Brian grow Interplay to the company that it was. And you know, we tried to learn from the things that they did right and the things that they did wrong. And they had a successful affiliated labels deal with EA for a while. And so we thought that was our next step. And so we looked around for possible partners. Davidson and Associates was one possible partner we looked at. And Interplay, of course, was another because we had the relationship with Interplay. So what we did with Davidson and Associates, you know, like I said, they're an educational software maker. We actually took on a project with Davidson to take one of their kids' titles and convert it from the Mac to the PC. And I did that port personally, which was a lot of fun, actually. And, you know, I didn't know anything about Windows programming before that. That's how I learned how to, you know, program on Windows, because I had to do it for the port. So it was called KidWorks 2, and they liked how that went, and that got us the relationship with the Davidsons, and they were interested in some of the other things we were working on, and they came down and looked at some of the other titles, and they were very aggressive at trying to convince us to be their entertainment division.
And so you worked on a couple of titles as Blizzard at this point, owned by Davidson now. And then Warcraft, Orcs and Humans comes out. There are a whole bunch of questions there. I mean, did you have Warcraft in mind when you first started pitching original IP, or was that something, was it inspired by, did you play Dune 2 or some of the other RTSs and just say, hey, we can do better?
We saw Dune 2 at one of the CES shows, I guess, and we thought wow, real-time strategy. That is really cool. What a cool, like the possibilities for that. That's just really exciting. It's so much more exciting than turn-based and having to wait for the other guy. And
Did you hear that? Real time. Yeah. Okay. I get into this argument with these guys every week.
Poker is turn-based, though.
Wait, I thought you were on my side. Hold on.
Anyway, so we were thinking, gosh, what if we did a game like that, but in a fantasy world where you could play head-to-head against another person?
So, okay, so the inspiration was there from Dune 2. The play head-to-head, that's a major innovation. That's pretty powerful stuff. And sort of overlaid on top of that was some of the humor and the cartooniness of Lost Vikings. Was that the sort of the first example of let's build on what we already know, or was there someone who was the comedian at Blizzard? Because someone's a funny guy.
I think if you go back and look at Lost Vikings, there's humor in there too.
That's what I mean. I mean,
I think we valued humor. It's all about having fun, right? And I think that, like, the great thing about Warcraft is, it's got the humor, but the story, there's nothing funny about that story. It's a serious tale, medieval tale, right? But the humor's kind of overlaid. It kind of makes fun of itself, which, I think we all just liked. Around that time, we had asked Bill Roper to do some work for us. He originally, we hired him to do some music for, if I remember this right, it's a PC version of Blackthorn.
Bill Roper did the music for PC?
Well, Bill's a musician. I don't know if you knew that. He's quite good.
Know that.
And I'm pretty sure that's what it was, PC version of Blackthorn. Bill also, knew he was basically trying to get a job at Blizzard, and he put together this demo tape, kind of in the theme of Warcraft, because he knew that we, were working on this Warcraft game and needed to show it. So we put together this tape that basically had, like, Holst planets playing in the background, and in the age of chaos, two factions battled for dominance. Right, that was on the demo tape, and we were like, wow. This is great. Yeah, let's get this guy to come in and do voiceovers for us. And so he did, and we ended up hiring him, and he wrote the dialogue in the campaigns and did a lot of the voices in Warcraft.
So was there any resistance to the humor or to the non-realistic graphics? I mean, I run into that all the time. I've been wanting to do a funny game that has non-photo representational graphics forever. And every time I go out and pitch something like that, until frankly recently, Disney doesn't really fight that stuff much. It's always no. That's not what the market wants. Do you ever run into that?
Well, nobody really.
Not
we don't
anymore,
really.
I'm sure.
We don't really run into people telling us what the market wants. Although, back when we did, for instance, Diablo, I mean, this is a little story, is we did Diablo, and we put Diablo out on Windows. That's when we made the switch from DOS to Windows. The sales department at Davidson was very concerned about that, because Windows, I guess that must have been Windows 95. Yes, it was Windows 95. Had just come out, and it hadn't really supplanted DOS yet. And especially in Europe, where people were running older systems, they were like, well, you're killing the Europe market by making this a Windows 95 only title. And we went and did it anyway. It turned out all right.
It's amazing. So speaking of Diablo,
I find that it works better to put on your player hat and try to look at things through the mindset of the players rather than looking at what the market data tells you all the time.
See, most of us get squashed when we try to do that. I don't know how you pull it off. It's pretty amazing.
I mean, you should be informed. I'm not saying do it in a vacuum. Be informed, but don't forget what you think as a player and what you want to play. That's very important, and don't ignore that.
So, Diablo. One of my favorite games of all time, by the way. It was one of the few I mean, I've told these guys already, but I don't think I've ever had a chance to tell you. It was one of the few games that I started playing on a Friday night, and the next time I looked up, the sun had come up, and I had no idea that time had passed. It was amazing. But that was actually developed by Blizzard North, which was Condor, right?
Yeah.
Did you guys meet on? You were working on different SKUs of Justice League.
That's
or something?
right.
What's
How
the
do you
story
know
there?
that?
I do my homework.
He does his homework.
I do my homework. So what was this? How did Blizzard and Condor hook up? Where did the idea for Diablo come from? How much work did you put into it? I'll stop asking questions and let you talk.
So the idea for Diablo, well, the Condor guys, I think what happened is they saw, I can't remember if it was Warcraft 1 or Warcraft 2. They saw one of those games at CES one year, and they reached out to Alan, and they put together a pitch for Diablo, which they sent to Alan, and Alan thought it was a really cool idea. It's very interesting, though. I mean, looking back, at the time, talking about market data, the conventional wisdom in the games industry was that role-playing games were dead. It was a dead genre.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to believe that now, but really, people thought role-playing games were dead, and that's because, well, they hadn't evolved yet. So, anyway, the original pitch for Diablo was pretty different, and it kind of evolved into what it became. But I mean, that's kind of the same thing with any of our games. They evolve over time, and we go in different directions as we get inspired.
Is it true that the original pitch was for a turn-based game?
Turn-based claymation.
What the heck? Okay, so basically nothing of the original proposal ended up on. No, I'm sorry.
No, that's not true either. But there was actually, I mean, there was a meeting I remember where the Blizzard North guys had come down. They were showing the game off to everybody, and it was going to be turn-based combat. And Alan asked everybody, "Hey, so what does everybody think about turn-based combat? Do you guys think that that's what we should do, or do you think the combat should be real-time? Who thinks it should be turn-based?" Maybe two hands. Who thinks it should be real-time? Everybody, right? Real-time.
Okay, so just paying attention to what players wanted. And was internet play always part of the Diablo plan? Was BattleNet always part of the plan?
No, actually. So, let's see. Around this time, you had Warcraft 2 was out. People were playing that. They were playing it over the internet through a local area network emulator called Kali. And
wow.
And so we actually worked a deal with them. We actually bundled Kali on the Warcraft 2 discs to make it easier for people to play online. And then during the course of Diablo development, we were looking around, and there were some other things starting to come out. Westwood had this thing called Westwood Chat, which let you play, I think, Monopoly over the internet. It was a matchmaking service for Monopoly games. And we thought that was really cool. Other companies were starting to talk about, I mean, everybody was talking about gameplay on the internet. This is kind of like the beginning of the .com bubble. Everybody was having internet. Web was starting to become popular. Everybody was looking for, okay, everybody's going to this new thing. How are we going to make money off of all these people that are going to be using internet, right? And I was thinking about that too, because it was this new big trend. You knew it was huge. So what's the right move for us? And we talked about it a lot, talked about different things, and the obvious answer we all came to was, well, I want it to be easy to hook up with people and play against them. So we had this idea, going up and making it very easy, as close to one click as possible to just hook up with another player and play them. And I shouldn't have to know anybody's IP addresses. I shouldn't have to be technical. I should be able to do it just through the game. It should do all that complicated stuff for me. Do we charge for it? right? That was a big question. What do we charge for this thing? You had other services, matchmaking services that were actually, I think, charging at the time for other games, or at least talking about it. And we decided that no, instead of trying to charge, which feels a little awkward because you were used to getting everything for free on the internet. It was a service to you, right? Instead of doing that, we'd be more like the TV model. We'd provide great content for players, let them play. We want them to play. We want them to have fun. We want them to tell their friends. And we'd display ads to them. So we'd have a lot of people. We'd display ads to them, and that would pay for the service. And it didn't have to generate a ton of profit. It just had to pay for itself, for the infrastructure of the service, because we thought that it would help us sell more boxes, and that's how we win.
So next came Warcraft. Well, there's Warcraft 2, Warcraft 2 console ports that EA did, and a bunch of other stuff. And then in 2001, I came across a quote that I thought was really interesting from you, where you said, "Somewhere between Warcraft and Warcraft 2 was when I knew we had made it." The company that we were before we published Warcraft 2 is definitely different from the company we were after we published Warcraft 2. Something changed there. What changed? And how did having made it affect the company, the decisions you made moving forward, public perception, company culture? What changed, and how did that change things for Blizzard? Or is this another one of those quotes that you don't even remember saying?
Well, I don't
do that
remember.
all the time.
I don't remember saying it, but I agree with it.
Excellent.
Something did change there, I guess. Definitely something changed when we released. I guess while we were working on Warcraft 2, that was such a tight, efficient team working on that project, and it was an evolution from what we had done before, something we were all very familiar with. And so we were kind of experts in the Warcraft project, and so we were kind of tuning Warcraft and evolving Warcraft. And I think Warcraft 2 is was just a game we were all very proud of, and kind of set the standard for the company to follow.
So the next thing that came out, that, as near as I can recall, was something called Diablo Hellfire. Remember that one?
Well, that came out. That was an
That was a
expansion
Sierra.
to Diablo.
Yeah, and as a player, I remember. I'm not asking you to diss on anything or even talk about what I could never put my finger on what that lacked. It lacked some of the charm of the original. It was such a disappointment. I mean, talk about a brand withdrawal for me as a fan. How did that happen? I mean, it seemed like you've been so good at calling your own shots, and then all of a sudden.
So the sales guys, who were very persuasive, came to us and said, "Hey, we think that you should do an expansion to Diablo." And we said, "Well, we don't have the resources to do that." And they said, "Well, how about we get this group within Sierra? They'll do it. Won't take any of your time." We're like, "No way, no way." And they said, "Well, come on, it's not going to take any of your resources. It won't be distraction at all. They'll do a great job." And we're like, "Well, the thing is, it's going to be impossible for us. I mean, it's a multiplayer game. We're patching it all the time. We don't have the time to make sure that the multiplayer environment works as well as, that they might, there's the whole economy thing, forget about the exploits and things like that, but there's player trading and different things, and we didn't have the resources and bandwidth to go in and balance something like that. And so we said, okay, tell you what, as a compromise, go ahead and do it, but single player only. And they said, okay. And they went and did it, except they put in a kind of backdoor that allowed you to enable multiplayer. And we said, okay, well, never again. Never again. You guys had your chance, and, we can't ever allow something like that to happen again.
Valuable lesson to learn, I guess.
We've had a lot of those.
Wow. And then came Starcraft and Brood War. And there are a bunch of issues there that just a couple I want to touch on. Was Starcraft built on the Warcraft engine? I'm not clear about that. Or did you scrap it and start from scratch the way Richard Garriott would have done? No, I know that's true. I mean, he has a policy. Ultima numbered games. You throw away all the tech between games and start from scratch.
It was built on the. So let's see. It was a staged evolution. The foundation was definitely built on Warcraft 2, but if you looked at the code, you'll probably have a hard time finding where those sections are, because we ended up, evolving almost all of it. But to get it up and going quickly, it started out completely based on the Warcraft 2 engine, and that's why when we showed it for the first time to the public at the industry show, I can't remember if it was E3 back then, I think it was.
Yeah, I think so.
People said, "Oh, this is just orcs in space. It looks just like Warcraft," and that caused us to go back and rethink, the graphical look of the game and a lot of different things. But so based on the old one, we ended up rewriting a lot of the engine.
And then Brood War comes out and introduces a bunch of enhancements and improvements. And one of the programmers, to be honest, I don't know Bob Fitch, but he called that the game Starcraft should have been.
Yeah.
So you've got this amazing reputation, deservedly, for shipping when it's ready.
Mm-hmm.
Why wasn't Starcraft the game Starcraft should have been? Why did you need to do Brood Wars to make it that game?
I think because we probably needed several months of public playing our game to figure out where all the holes were. Basically Brood War, well, first of all, by the time we started, hold on. We learned a lot from StarCraft development, so we were able to apply that to the Brood War campaign, and also we're able to kind of fill in some holes in the game balance, by adding a few strategic units here and there to really make sure that the game balance was where we thought it needed to be. But we couldn't have done that before we released StarCraft, I don't think.
Is Brood War the basis for all the tournament play now? Or
oh yeah, everybody plays Brood War. Everybody who plays StarCraft plays Brood War.
Okay. And then I hate to do this. I'm going to skip past Diablo 2 and Warcraft 3 and jump ahead to World of Warcraft because we're kind of short on time. But I think I mentioned this to you earlier. This game really made a liar out of me because up until World of Warcraft, I really thought that MMOs were niche products, with a great business model. And looking back on it, I guess I can sort of predict the answer, but just to be sure, how does Blizzard make the decision to go after EverQuest, which destroyed Ultima Online, which destroyed Meridian 15? I mean, it seems like there's only room for one winner in that space. How did you decide to leave this wonderful, successful place behind to go tackle this new market where the game's topped out at about 500,000?
First, you have to understand that for a long time, when we first picked the name Blizzard, right? We called it Blizzard Entertainment because we wanted the flexibility to, be an entertainment company, and we knew that technology was going to a point that eventually, you'd be able to create virtual worlds and virtual reality and do fun things with that. And so, even after we shipped Warcraft 2, I remember us talking about, wouldn't this be great to eventually make like a Warcraft world game where you could actually be a guy in Warcraft and walk around and explore, and that would be so cool. But you couldn't, the technology just wasn't available to do that. And then Ultima came out, Ultima Online, and that proved, hey, the technology is available to do this. Okay, so after we shipped Brood War, we had another project in development that was never announced, and it was going along, and we kind of took a step back, and we asked ourselves, okay, if we were going to work on any game right now, if we hadn't, forget about this game, if we were just going to start a new game right now, would it be the game we're working on? No, it wouldn't be. Well, what game would it be? Well, it would be probably an MMO, because that was what everybody was excited about. People were really into Ultima. People can't remember exactly when EverQuest came out, but I know that was huge when it came out. and we wanted to bring Warcraft to life, and Warcraft was like, seemed to be the universe we wanted to bring to life. It was the one everybody said, yeah, let's do it with Warcraft. So I don't know. I don't think we were ever hung up on how are we going to compete with EverQuest. Like I said, all of our games didn't necessarily start off with the exact same design that they ended up with. Initially, we wanted to make to use more of a Diablo 2 model where there was a single-player component and a massively multiplayer component. You know, and we got into it and we realized that's two different games. We can't do this as one game, not with massively multiplayer, you know, like you did with Diablo. So we ended up saying, okay, well, we can't do the single player. We're going to do a online only game. That was a huge decision for us.
So if the game had, I mean, clearly you can't predict 9 million units, 9 million players around the world. I mean, you can't have gone in forecasting that.
No way.
So you would have been happy if you had just, you know, sold 500,000 units and made a great game and had it.
I would have been very disappointed.
Really?
Yeah.
So what were your original goals for the game?
So there's forecast and then there's goals, right? So
Sure.
yeah, maybe we forecast for 500,000 units, but we thought that we had something very special that would have long legs and eventually would become big. What does big mean? I don't know. I mean, in my mind, I kind of figured, okay, maybe we have 1 million players in the United States, 1 million players in Korea, 1 million players in Europe, and 2 million in China. That's was my math, although I would never put that in a budget.
Sure.
That was just like eventually maybe we might hit something like this, and my reasoning was, well, I thought the US market for these games was growing. I didn't agree that it had peaked with EverQuest. I thought the Korean market was potentially bigger than the United States. It was definitely bigger at the time. I thought that maybe we'd have about as many people in Korea. Europe was growing. Eventually, Europe would be about the same time as the US because the console market is the same size as the US if you look at the console numbers, approximately. And China, lots of people.
So, looking back at Blizzard's history, not to move too high a level here, but Warcraft, 2 players.
Yeah.
Warcraft 2, 8 players.
Mm.
BattleNet, lots of players. World of Warcraft, tons of players. That sure looks like a plan. Is that? Am I just sort of retroactively creating?
It's a
something
trajectory more than a plan.
At what point did you see that as the company's future? I mean, clearly, multiplayer has been an important part of Blizzard's philosophy from the start. At what point did that become a conscious thing, and not just, oh wait, we did it again?
As far as growing the number of players that are interacting?
I mean, really, well, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, it seems like multiplayer is the heart of...
Yeah, multiplayer is definitely...
you're not going to do a single-player game anytime soon, are you?
Don't really think we're not planning on it, no.
So when did that become a business decision? I mean, it's something that drives your business as opposed to just something that happened and you look back and said, wait a minute, we kind of fell into this.
Well, I think actually even going back to the days of Lost Vikings, which is a single-player game.
I was going to mention that too.
Okay, well, we always asked ourselves, hey, how can we get multiple people sharing this experience together? And so Lost Vikings, we had a thing where mode where you could control different Vikings with your friend, and it was tough because you had one TV that you had to share. So if the screen had to follow one character, it couldn't follow both of them. And so if one guy was off in a corner somewhere and another guy was over here, you'd have to follow one guy, and the other guy couldn't move while the screen wasn't on him. Otherwise, he might get himself killed. So even back then, we were always looking for how we could have people sharing the experience together. And Alan used to say, that it's just something's very different when you're playing against a computer and when you're playing against another person. You don't really get bragging rights when you beat the computer, but you do when you play another person. And also the other person you're playing against, he's constantly learning and getting better. And while computers are maybe getting better at that, they're still not at the level that humans are.
So, wow. So am I doomed? I only make single player games. All right, don't answer that. We'll talk later.
So that was a trick question.
No, that was a question we're going to talk about when the cameras turn off. Does MMO equal fantasy?
No.
I mean, so you believe there's room for other genres that can achieve a level of success comparable to World of Warcraft?
Sure. I don't see why not.
Okay, and you're not going to tell me whether you're actually pursuing any of that? Okay.
No.
Okay, fair enough. So I shouldn't bother asking you if you were looking to knock Blizzard out of the top spot in the MMO world, what would you do?
I don't know.
Okay, fine. Let's talk about unshipped games. Okay, I think one of the most important things a publisher can do, and you guys clearly qualify as a publisher, even if you're owned by a publisher. One of the most important things a publisher can do is kill stuff, kill projects, and I think what brings a lot of developers down and publishers down is that they're not willing to do that. We've invested so much in this, we won't do it.
Right.
And that's,
well, let's at least try to get some of our money back.
Exactly, and I think that's a disaster.
Yep.
So I can think of 3 examples, and you just mentioned a 4th, which I'm hoping what was that unknown game, the one that was never announced, that you were working on? Remember, you just
as a matter of policy, we don't generally talk about those things.
It's just a class of
I would tell you, except there's a camera sitting there. So.
All right, fine. But there were 3 unshipped games that were announced. Okay, and so I'm wondering.
Let me see if you got them all.
Well, there's Pax Imperia 2.
Oh, yeah. Good.
There's Warcraft Adventures.
Yeah.
And there's Starcraft Ghost.
There was also a game called Shattered Nations.
Shattered Nations.
That was announced also. I think, in fact, it had a trailer on the Warcraft 2 CD originally with Pax Imperia.
So what is the thought process? If it's different for each of these, we can talk about them individually. But is there a thought process behind stopping work on a project? And is there a difference between cancellation and indefinite? What is it?
Indefinite hold.
Indefinite hold. Yeah. So why did you stop working on those projects?
Well, I guess if you want a high level, we cancel a project because we think that the amount of effort and resources that it's going to take to get it to completion at a point that we would consider Blizzard quality is greater than the opportunity cost of doing something else.
Okay. And was it...
So, Warcraft Adventures.
Yeah.
Okay.
I couldn't believe you even started that as a note. But that's just me.
Well, actually, I mean, it would have been a fun game. It was cool. We liked the 2D graphical adventures that Lucas had done. We wanted to tell this story about Thrall. That was basically going to be Thrall's story. It was actually quite far along, but Lucas came out with Monkey Island. I can't remember which number. It was the last one. And it was awesome. One of the best 2D graphical adventures ever. But commercially, it didn't do very well.
You probably had more people in the Olympic Stadium in Seoul the other day.
And we saw that, and we're like, whoa. First of all, our game's not even as good as this. Okay, so we can't release this as it is. It's going to take us a year, maybe, of work to go back and overhaul this to get it up to the kind of quality that Lucas is doing. So we can't release it like it is. Have to go back and do all this extra work. We weren't graphical adventure guys. This was our first one. So after a year, maybe it would be as good. Maybe it wouldn't. Who knew, right? So, oh, and by the way, even if it is as good, it's not going to sell because nobody's buying these things. So it was a very difficult decision because we all really liked the project.
And then Starcraft Ghost, I mean, clearly you like the developer because you bought Swinging Ape, right, after that?
We bought them during it.
During it, okay. And there were certainly people really eager for that game. and still to this day, I suspect, if you said we're shipping it, you
Yeah.
have a lot of fans very happy.
Okay, so the scenario there is a bit different. We still think that the concept for the game has a lot of potential and could be a great game. It needed a lot of work to get up to the standards of quality that some of the other games in that genre were doing. You're competing with Halo, you're competing with Gears of War, really good games, really executed well. We were on the wrong platform. We were on the Xbox, old gen. We weren't on Xbox 360 or PlayStation 3. So we had a limited amount of time basically to market before. Our market wasn't growing, let's put it that way. Market wasn't growing. It was plateauing and maybe starting to decline. And in order to finish that game, that team needed additional resources. It needed a lot of work, a lot of focus, Blizzard attention. We have this like concept of this big giant spotlight that we can shine on any one thing, but it takes a lot of effort and momentum to get that thing moved over and shining on something. But once you do, that's where the polish really happens, right? Well, this was a time where we were dealing with World of Warcraft growth. So, and Starcraft 2 was in development. And both of those teams were still growing. And so we had contention for resources. You know, if the console team needed to hire somebody and they identified this awesome person that also could help out on World of Warcraft, well, we got to give them to World of Warcraft. And that was not an environment that the console team could succeed in. And by the way, there were a lot of talented people in the console team that could also help out on StarCraft 2 and World of Warcraft. And so all of those things together, we didn't feel like we had an environment where that team could succeed at a level that we needed to. And so it was a difficult decision too, but we decided, okay, let's put the project on hold and shift our resources to the PC where our core business really is right now.
Well, that leads to an interesting question. Blizzard seems like a company that is pretty razor sharp, laser focused on goals. The one place where I don't get where you're coming from is consoles. I mean, it's like one year it's, we believe in the future of consoles, and the next year it's, we have a Blizzard console team, and the next year it's, we're not going to do consoles. And well, all things are on the table. And where does Blizzard fall on the console?
We like consoles. We like playing on consoles. We would love to be able to make console games without it impacting our PC business and do them great. But we can't, you know, and if we could do everything at the same time, we would do that. But, you know, I talked about it in the presentation that I gave earlier. You have to focus on what's really important and not try to do everything at the same time. Recognize when you can't do that. And this is one case where we had to recognize that, although we do like console games. And so present us with a great console idea, and we're like, oh yeah, let's do that.
Well, are you at all concerned? I actually have no opinion about this, though it may sound like it from the way I'm about to ask the question, but are you at all concerned that the MMO or multiplayer world is going to move from the PC over to the consoles, the new consoles, in the same way that the single player game experience has, I mean, it's moved. The PC single player market is, you know, not doing too well.
Well, so I'm not concerned. I think consoles are a great platform, and I think eventually you'll have more larger, more epic online components in those games. And I certainly wouldn't take that off the table for us. I just think we need to focus on doing a small number of things and doing them really well. And at that point in time, the amount of resources required to do that on the PC side was too great.
Well, looking ahead, are you kind of scanning the horizon and going, okay, what's the moment when it's going to be worth our while to move over to the console?
I think we're always open to that. We talk about it. I think we look at each individual game and see, okay, well, what platform does it make sense for this game to be on? Mm-hmm. You know, just talk about it from there, and, you know, usually come back to one of these arguments, well, we don't have the resources, or we need to focus, or, you know, and then there's a competition between, okay, well, yeah, but how good is the idea? Is this the perfect idea that has to be on a console? In which case, okay, well, maybe we consider it and talk about it, and what are the ramifications? What's the opportunity cost? What are we not going to be able to do if we do this? Where are the resources coming from? Those kinds of things that I think you have to think about.
Sure. So let me move to another topic. One of the things that I find remarkable about Blizzard, I mean, the consistent level of quality is just unbelievable. I can't think of many other developers where it's hard for me to spot a weakness. I mean, great graphics, great gameplay, great design, great sound. I mean, when I hear the sound of a ring hitting the ground in Diablo, it's like I salivate. I mean, a little line of drool right in the corner.
I know the sound.
You know.
Yeah.
Whoever made that sound should really get a nice bonus if you didn't already. But you know, best cinematics. I mean, you're just best in class at everything. And I'm really not just saying that, and I haven't said that to any of the other people who've sat in that chair, by the way. And that's happened despite Bill Roper and others going and starting flagship studios, the ArenaNet guys leaving, Ready at Dawn Studios, Red 5 Studios, Click Entertainment, Carbine Studios, a bunch of others. All these people who seem critical from the outside leave, Blizzard quality completely unchanged. What the heck are you doing over there? I mean, what's in the water?
It's commitment. The people we have are committed to maintaining a certain level of quality, and so, I mean, you don't hit it right away. You don't. Nobody does. We don't. You know, we're working on Starcraft 2 for however many years. It's not at a Blizzard level of quality right now. You know, it has to go through this process, and when it goes through the process, there are going to be things we find, and we have to fix those things, and sometimes it is a lot of work, and it's difficult decisions, and it all comes down to what's really important and what are you committed to.
Do you have like official training methods and mentoring processes and all that sort of stuff? I mean, do you have the guys who know what it means to make a Blizzard game taking the new guys under their wing and all that? Is there, or is that just sort of ad hoc? How does that happen?
The training process is going through development.
All right, it's just like Origin.
If you go through development, you start off and you don't really understand, and then you come out the other end, and you're like, oh. And I've had people tell me that you know, it's like, okay, now I understand what you're talking about. You kind of just have to go through the process, and then you understand how it works and why it works and why certain things are important.
Do you ever get people coming into your office or saying, oh yeah, sure, whatever, Blizzard's different, you know, and then like a year later coming in and saying you were right? That's the magic moment for me when I have that conversation and people don't believe it, and then they see it after going through the development process.
No, actually, I have had people come in, but early on, you know, after being there for not very long, and saying, wow, this is different from any place I've ever worked.
That's cool. Okay, I want to talk about mainstream. Do we have time? What is our time like?
Looks like we've got 20 minutes.
Oh man, you guys are not getting to ask any more questions. So, okay. There's more Blizzard merchandise and cross-media exploitation than most other games. I was tempted to say than any because I'm kind of given to overstatement. But is that an active effort on your part, or do you just get people coming to you all the time saying, please let us use World of Warcraft in our Toyota Tundra ads? I mean,
Toyota Tacoma, I think.
We'll check that later. I think I'm right. No, I mean, do you have like whole people dedicated to to that sort of thing?
We've got a fantastic marketing team. We do get a lot of opportunities. We say no to a lot more than we say yes to. We try to be pretty selective about what we do. Mm-hmm. And that goes for the merchandise and the advertising and pretty much everything. But we are also actively looking.
And so, how did the South Park episode happen? I mean, any developer in the world would kill for that.
So I guess they had some of their artists that played World of Warcraft and were really into it, and they contacted us, and actually a year before it happened, they contacted us, and we sent some people down to their studio to help them, work on something, and it just, the process was too long. They churn those things out so fast. I think they do like an episode a week. It's incredible. They're really fast. And so there just wasn't enough time to do anything with World of Warcraft. But the following year, they contacted us again and said, hey, we'd like to try this again. By that point, we had already kind of beefed up our video department, which is separate from our cinematics department right now.
Okay.
Basically doing video and in-game footage for World of Warcraft, and we've got some machinima guys in there. So we were able to send these guys up to the South Park studios and basically help them, do what they did. And of course, our guys are really excited about it. We're really excited about it. We like South Park. We think they're really funny. There was a bit of a leap of faith, of course, because they don't enter that process with a script. They just kind of have, we've kind of got this idea about, a guy who's going around killing people in the World of Warcraft, and they have to go and save the World of Warcraft.
Were you at all worried? I mean, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, those guys are crazy. I mean, were you at all worried that what they were going to do to your baby? Did you have any controls on that once you said, sure, we want to do it?
We really didn't, which is kind of abnormal for us because we always have controls over everything. And we just kind of, with this one, we just kind of said, well, this could be really funny. And it's a huge opportunity, right? To have something you created on South Park watched by millions of people.
I was jealous, I got to tell you. That's amazing.
So we were very happy with how it came out. And it won an Emmy.
So what about the Warcraft movie? I mean, you've talked about wanting movies for years at Blizzard.
I have, yeah.
And how did you hook up with Legendary Pictures? I mean, after all these years, why them? And why live action and not CGI?
Well, okay, so the live action versus CGI thing, I think anybody who's seen Lord of the Rings knows that a live action fantasy movie is possible. And that's kind of the bar, We'd like to get somewhere close to that. I think that they did about as well as you can do. So that's kind of what we have in mind. We want to bring the Warcraft universe to life, and it's a real place with real people and fantasy people too. We've been looking for a partner to help us bring our game worlds to the big screen for a very long time, and it's been difficult. Initially, the feedback we got was that Hollywood just was not interested in fantasy. Fantasy movies don't sell. That's what they said. And right, and then Lord of the Rings comes out and Harry Potter comes out, and it's like, yes, we knew. See, just do them well and they'll sell. People will go see them. So we went out and they said, yeah, this is too much like Lord of the Rings, so we're not interested. But we hooked up with a producer, John Jashney, who was actually helping us go around and pitching the idea to Hollywood. John actually hooked up with Legendary, and he's now one of the guys running Legendary. And so after he did that, he came to us and he said, hey guys, I think I've got the perfect partner for you. And we met Thomas Tull at Legendary. We got to know those guys, and they have the same kind of philosophy that we have when it comes to these things. They don't do a huge number of projects, but the ones that they do, they want to make sure that they come out really great, and their track record backs that up. Batman Begins, Superman Returns, 300, and so they also understand how important this is to us. We don't have to do a Warcraft movie. The game's doing great on its own. In fact, it's kind of risky for us to go and do something like that, because if the movie's not good, it could do some damage to the brand. But if it is good, and we think it can be, and there's nothing that says that movies that start out as games have to be bad. There's nothing that says that. I know people think there's something that says that, but there really isn't.
I completely agree with you.
And the other thing too, which I think is really important, is that we're approaching this, and Legendary is approaching this from the standpoint, this isn't a game movie. This isn't a movie based on a game or based on a game franchise. This is a movie based on a really cool universe with really cool characters that happen to be in a game. But that doesn't define the movie. It's got to be a great movie that stands on its own, and even if you haven't played any Warcraft games and you go and see the movie, ideally you walk out thinking, hey, that was a great movie. So that's what we want to do, and hopefully we can show everybody that that's possible too.
Yeah, there's a whole line of questions about the Warcraft movie that we could get into here, but let's move on here. I know everybody here, or most of the people here, either work in the game business or want to work in the game business. What do you think it takes to get a job in the game business these days? What's the route into it?
I think there's not one answer to that. There are a number of different paths into the game industry. I think, it should be something that you're passionate about. It can be a lot of work. It's really exciting. It's moving really fast. You've got to stay up on things, whether you're an artist or a programmer or really anything. You got to keep up on what's happening in those fields. A lot of people start out the kind of entry-level position, no experience, is a lot of times through quality assurance, testing games, customer service, supporting games. But we're business too, so all of the functions that businesses require, we also require. Human resources, public relations, marketing, all of these things. Sometimes it helps just to get your foot in the door and to get to know people. So we do try to look first at people that are already employed with us, and people that rise up through the ranks, maybe have a bit of an advantage than somebody who's outside the company trying to get in. We get a lot of resumes. Working on projects on your own, I think, is also a really good way. If you have a website, experiment with what you can do with that. If you're a programmer, experiment with what cool things you can create, and then those things become kind of part of your portfolio that when you're going on an interview you can show, hey, I was really interested in this, and so I did this. Look. And then, we can see, oh, wow, this guy took the initiative, he went and learned on his own. You don't go and do side projects on your own if it's not something you're interested in.
So when you hire, I asked you this off camera here a little while ago, is it team fit or talent that you look at? How important are those two parts of the equation?
We look at both. They're both important. I think you can get disqualified basically if either of those aren't there.
Mm-hmm. And so is there is being a gamer a prerequisite for employment at Blizzard?
It is, actually.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
it's a question. What games are you playing? Are you a gamer?
Yeah. No, we do that too, actually. In fact,
I think it's really important, and really for all of the positions, our director of finance is a hardcore World of Warcraft player.
Oh yeah.
And don't laugh, it's really important, right? We're spending serious money on supporting this game, and if the finance guy does not understand from the player's perspective what the impact of that is, he might think we should cut some of those costs. We should buy cheaper equipment. We should not have so many customer service people. And that's waste of time for me to convince him why we need to go and do that. Or anybody to convince people, if we're all on the same page and we understand, hey, this is all about the experience, we provide a great experience, people are going to stay longer, they're going to tell their friends, that pays off. That is right. That is good business strategy. If they understand that, then we can all talk about, okay, well, how are we going to do that?
There are two things I wanted to touch on, and then I'm gonna wrap this up because we're out of time, not because I'm out of questions, that's for sure. In getting ready for this, I found a couple things that that really intrigued me. One was before World of Warcraft came out. You said it was on a website. I can't remember. We were both actually interviewed on the same website about the next 25 years
I remember
of
that.
games or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things you said just took me completely by surprise.
Really?
That the thing the industry underestimates is the social aspect
yeah.
and the appeal of location-based entertainment. What the heck? I mean, do you really see arcades making a comeback?
What I meant by that, I don't know if it's arcades. It's about the connection and being with people, being entertained with people. And I guess you could call multiplayer gaming in your living room on your console location-based entertainment, if you want. Maybe that's a stretch.
Okay.
Rock Band.
Yeah. Okay.
There's like a 4 or 5 player game in your living room that a lot of people are really excited about. I guess what I was just trying to say is that the social aspect, the aspect of gaming that connects people to each other is, I think, really exciting and something that has a long way to evolve.
So I really am doomed. Okay. Yeah.
The Sims is a single-player game, though.
With a huge community. I mean,
Right, but I mean,
built
just
that
to
huge community.
say, there's maybe something there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So, 2 final questions. Where are the 3 founding members of Blizzard today?
Well, Frank Pierce is our Senior Vice President of Product Development. He's executive producer on World of Warcraft and Wrath of the Lich King right now. Alan Adham is actually, he's managing a private equity fund that he's created. So he's a private equity manager.
The guy who got this started, who burned to make games, is not making games now.
Well, so
how interesting.
I don't know if Alan would phrase it like this, but probably if you look at it, the stock market is maybe one of the largest massively multiplayer games. Right? So Alan's working on a way. I mean, he's basically, he's brilliant, smart guy, creative. He has done his homework. He's researched all the great minds in investment strategy. He has basically applied that to his own heuristics and created a computer algorithm that goes and looks at the stocks that are available and picks the ones he thinks are going to go up. He picks the ones that are going to go down and does that. So he's, I mean, you could kind of say that he's still in development software and writing third-party, I don't know, add-ons.
That's amazing. Okay, final question. You know, I've always said that as much as I love games, I'd give it all up in a heartbeat if I could get in a van and play guitar in a band and just make a living at it. What would you give up games to do?
You know, I would love to do that too, and I just know that I'm not good enough to do that.
Amen, brother. I'm with you.
So,
you'll notice I'm not doing it.
I haven't really found the thing. I love playing poker, but I wouldn't want to do that for a living. I really like programming, and I'd like to get back to that. So I don't think I'm done programming, but just maybe taking a long break.
Excellent. Any other questions here? Whoa, okay. Sure. Okay. We'll start over there and move on.
I was going to say, I know, I think it was Diablo 2, the crunch time was like 18 months or something ridiculous, and so...
Yeah, I don't think it was that long.
Yeah, but it seems, I think it was longer than, it was just crazy from what I remember reading. Like, how do you sustain something like that for so long, you know, with you're being pulled every which way, and you know it's not just pressure from maybe the marketing and the business side, but how do you keep up with that internal like conflict of how do I sustain this level of development?
Well, I think the idea is to try to avoid long crunches because they aren't sustainable, and so I think we are getting a lot better at trying to plan and trying to reduce the amount of crunch that happens at the end of a project. I don't know if we'll be able to eliminate it completely. I think some amount of crunch is actually healthy for a project, but a long crunch is not, is something we really try to avoid. We do. Yeah.
Can you give us a sense of closure and call the Warcraft movie Warcraft Adventures?
It's a different storyline.
And let's hear it. So let's say we're getting $15 a month from 9 million people. It seems like if we take a chunk of that, or maybe like ask some executive to give a bonus, that we could create like a fund within Blizzard to fund say indie games, or have a separate label similar to how what was done in the console division earlier. So you could have a Miramax, for example. Is that in the future, or can you release like less than Blizzard quality titles because it's Miramax?
You mean have a division that basically goes off and does stuff that's more independent?
Yes.
Yeah. It's kind of a departure from our basic philosophy, which is to try to maintain a certain level of quality on everything we do, which requires a certain amount of attention and focus. So, and you could say, yeah, but don't worry about that for these particular things. Just basically go into it knowing that they're just not going to be as good. We're not capable of doing that, because we'll look at it and we'll say, oh, we know how good this could be if we just spent the time and focus on it, and we've tried it before. We can't do something halfway. Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay.
You're in charge.
Well, I want to give other people a chance here. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
When designing World of Warcraft, did you ever feel that the massively multiplayer online medium perhaps maybe restricted some of like the possibilities, like in terms of in design, like what you wanted to do, like from the start?
I think it definitely puts constraints on what you can and can't do, but I think that's just one of the constraints that we knew we were dealing with. So we, work within that. But I don't think we don't really have any. That's just the type of game it is.
When you're scheduling, when you guys are notorious for not announcing dates, and saying when it's done, how much of that is actually being done internally too? In other words, are y'all extremely agile and just, you couldn't even answer the question internally what y'all are shooting for, or how much are you really shooting for that?
We do have schedules internally. We do have target dates internally. We of course have budgets internally. We're a part of a public company, so we have to produce budgets, and we have to produce strategic plans that goes out several years. But we've found throughout the years, just by doing this, that it doesn't really serve anybody any good by setting up expectations outside that we have to manage and go back and, oh, sorry, we told you this, but it's not going to be that, and explain it and everything like that. It just puts too much pressure on us before that pressure is useful.
World of Warcraft is such a social and cultural phenomenon now. Did you guys have any? We all we read stories about people who've met their wife or lost their job because they play 24 hours a day, and people playing 100 hours per week, and all these people in the 10th of 1%. Is there any talk about that internally, the effects that this game is having on as a culture and a society? It's so big.
Yeah, we do talk about that, and we do talk about Let's see. Let's just say we do talk about that.
Well, I'm getting the we're out of time signal, so I'm afraid we'll have to cut it off there.
On that note.
On that
How about one more question?
All right. Wait a minute. Maybe I'll ask one of mine. Hold on. No, is there one more question out here? Isn't there one more? Go ahead.
I was just gonna talk to you a little bit about like what about like your possible like mod community? Because I know there was a few for like Warcraft 3 and.
How do you feel about Dota?
We think Dota is great.
Excellent.
Do you know what Dota is? Okay. Yeah, we totally we like to provide the mod community with tools to be able to create great content. That's why we've been providing campaign editors with our real-time strategy games to help people do that. We think it's awesome when people put together stuff that the community embraces, like they did with Dota. Fantastic.
All right. On that note, I think we will end. Thank you very much
All
for
right.
coming.